Okay. Wait. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Thriving Thursday. This is Mental Health Edition. Julie and I worked out this evening.
Yes.
And now we are here in our workout attire to talk about mental health. This is a topic that our community requested that we talk about. This is especially important for women's health. And we're going to go over some different aspects of mental health that people don't necessarily think about firsthand. Especially, we're going to be talking about how this current season is affecting people's mental health and their emotional states. We're going to talk about different physical causes for mental health issues, the different nervous system regulation responses that you might be in, some tools for each one, some simple suggestions to kind of get you back in your body. And we're also going to be talking about specifically for women, the burden of stress that they bear for mental health, which is really, really important. So we have some slides to share, and then at the end, we'll open it up to some questions for everyone. Sounds like a plan. All right, let me just share my screen. And we can go from there. And if at any point anyone has any thoughts or questions or suggestions.
Oh, I love that it's already September. And
oh my gosh, you know what? When I made this, I was like, it is August. It's not.
it's not. But that's actually, it's actually perfect way to start this because September is the 5th season. It's a new month. And
Absolutely.
it's a month of adjustment. We often forget. It just goes by fast this summer. And here we are after Labor Day, trying to get used to it.
Well, that is so funny because I double checked that like twice and
I'm sure
did not click. So people are struggling feeling the September season. You are absolutely.
I think it's perfect. It's exactly how we're all feeling now.
Yeah. So I will change.
That's why we need to talk about this a little bit.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Absolutely. So yeah, I'm clearly feeling it too. Sorry, everyone. So it continues on a bunch of pages.
We just ignore it and on record, but it's everywhere.
Everyone ignore it. I will update the slides.
Well, it's great. Exactly. Mind, body. This is why we need it.
Yes. So we're going to start by doing a little mind body check-in. We're going to go over the season of late summer, like Julie was just talking about. We're going to go over a little nervous system assessment so you can see where your nervous system is at. We're going to go over some regulation tools for each one of the categories of the nervous system response, some physical causes of nervous system dysregulation. It's really important to go over those so people have a little bit of context. But sometimes it is a physical issue, not just necessarily a mental issue, and the burden that women have, especially in their stress response. So let's all do a quick mind body check-in. So I'm going to have everyone, let's all just take a deep breath together in through your nose and exhale out the mouth. Maybe this time, let's inhale, let's raise our arms above our head. And exhale, let those arms fall. Feel that letting go sensation. Maybe a little bit of heaviness in the body. Feeling your body connect into that surface underneath you, whether it's a chair, whether you're laying down on the couch. And as we're sitting here, feeling hopefully maybe a little bit more connected to ourselves, let's do a little bit of a mental check-in. Are there currently any thoughts circulating in our head of I'm not okay? Are there any ruminating thoughts? Things that we just can't quite let go of? Is our brain trying so desperately to predict our future when we are currently in our present moment? And you don't necessarily have to do or change anything, but I just want everyone to take a second to acknowledge, do we have some of these thoughts going on and repeat in our head? This is part of a nervous system response that takes us out of the present moment. And when we get an idea of where our physical state is at, let's do a physical body check-in. What does your body currently feel like? For me, I'm feeling my feet touch the chair underneath me, and I'm acknowledging that I haven't really touched base with my feet a whole lot today. I'm feeling my glutes that I just worked out in this workout class being supported by the chair underneath me, and it feels really good that they feel really relaxed right now. Maybe you notice a little bit of constriction in your throat or some tightness in your chest. And none of these sensations are good, bad, right, or wrong. Can we just notice them without making any thoughts or assumptions about them? And as we're sitting with these physical sensations, ask yourself, can I be with this? Whatever our mental state is, whatever is happening physically in our bodies, we can continue to ask ourselves, can I be with this? Or an affirmation, I can be with this. And I am okay. Two really important mantras to connect into the sense of safety for our mental state and our physical body. So hopefully that felt nice for everyone to connect back into the mind-body connection. So just like Julie was talking about, we are currently in the 5th season, according to traditional Chinese medicine. And traditional Chinese medicine theory, they really got it figured out with so many things. And they incorporated this 5th season because it doesn't quite fall into the energetics of summer, which summer is all about lots of socialization. You have tons of energy. You don't need as much sleep. You can eat a bunch of cold raw foods. It's go, go, go. Lots of fun, lots of enjoyment. And the fall is about grief. It's about, you see the leaves change color. And in nature, it represents a lot of death. We see a new cycle ending as the leaves die on the trees. And the season that we're in right now, it doesn't really fit either. And Julie and I were talking about this today. You can really, the energy has shifted and you can feel it. Like, we're not quite in this expansive summer energy anymore, but we're not quite in this sense of fall where we're seeing things in nature kind of go into hibernation. So the season of late summer is the in-between. And it's where we can build our really solid foundations that help us in the grief of the fall and the beauty of the fall. And especially in the winter when things get really quiet and we come back to this sense of stillness. So it is the perfect time to create a lot of stability. The season of late summer in Chinese medicine, each season is associated with an element, and this is the earth element. The earth element, again, all about stability, finding your sense of grounding, coming back to our bodies, coming back to the present moment. Earth is very nurturing, and there's a tendency with earth constitution types, everyone has a constitution type, to take care of others before you take care of yourself. So people who have a whole lot of earth in them, and especially in the earth season, we have to remember to take care of ourselves. When we overgive and we're not pouring from a full cup, we get really burnt out. So we need to come back and make sure we're nourishing ourselves first and primarily, and we can better give to other people. Fire is summer. So fire is here, there, everywhere, very energetic. And earth is it's a slow moving energy. It's not quite still, but earth, it's brick by brick, climbing up that mountain. Energy, Julie and I know all too well. Yeah. So taking time to really slow down, feeling this time, it's a beautiful time of year. to really enjoy the present moment. And number three, bringing us to this present moment. Summer is about doing, it's very action oriented. Late summer is just about being and enjoying. And the emotion associated with late summer is worry. And worry, we tend to experience this emotion more when we are out of balance, when the earth element doesn't feel super connected. And it tends to be one thought that's repeating over and over. Fire is more, if we have anxiety, it's more like, you're ping ponging, bouncing thoughts. Earth is like, we're ruminating over one thing and we can't quite let it go. And earth is associated with our digestive system. And it's almost like an indigestion of the mind. Like we're chewing mentally on something over and over and we can't quite digest it. So there may be a specific event, a specific thought or something in particular that you're having a really hard time letting go of. And so that may or may not be coming up for you right now, especially around the topic of mental health. So our nervous system assessment, Julie, did you have anything to say? I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I was there. Checking in is important.
Yes. Yeah, it is super important. To just to even acknowledge, like, what is that pattern going on? And then kind of coming back to that first slide that we were talking about, I am safe and I can be with this. It helps to kind of ease the pressure that those ruminating thoughts can have on us. Super important. So our nervous system assessment that we can kind of check in with ourselves to see where our nervous system is at. So if we are in a parasympathetic state, which is our rest and digest state, tend to feel really grounded. Things feel good. We feel in our bodies. We feel relaxed and calm. Oftentimes when people are in parasympathetic states, they swallow a little bit more, they blink a little bit more, they yawn a little bit more. So those are some physical cues that you may or may not be in a parasympathetic state. Tends to feel good and safe to be in the present moment. If we are in a sympathetic state, this is more of our fight, flight, freeze response. And everyone's nervous system acts a little bit differently, which ones they kind of are geared towards. You can also exist in more than one state at once, which is an interesting thing to try to figure out. If one foot's on the gas and one foot's on the brake, that actually happens to me sometimes. I can be in like a flight and a freeze state at the same time. And once you get a little bit familiar of what the signs are, you'll start to be able to differentiate what specific situations can bring you into what section of the nervous system response. So our first one is fight. This one I think is probably the easiest one of the three to identify. It's feeling angry and triggered and reactive, and you can get increased heart rate or blood pressure. It's headaches, it's a lot of upward rising energy, and it's combative. It's very defensive. So when someone questions you on something, it's an automatic deflection. It's feeling angry. And this reminds me a lot of walking in Boston. So I think we have a lot of people potentially in that fight state in this not so peaceful city. I know Julie has experienced that.
Yeah, and I also think though that when we check in with ourselves and we stop and literally sometimes it's forcing yourself to sit down on a park bench and look up and like look at a squirrel and look at the leaves changing, or notice that the sunset tonight when we were working out, like I kept looking at it because it's a stable, consistent thing. It happens every night. It just happens to be at different times. And it's kind of beautiful to watch that over the city. And I needed that. So it's like to focus, to get out of the state where it's ruminating and focus.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's so important to reorient to where you are in the present moment. Yeah. Fight is an interesting one. And then flight. So flight is interesting. There tends to be this feeling of feeling really overwhelmed. And it can manifest as ruminating thoughts, perfectionism. There tends to be this urge to want to escape. So whether that's from your physical environment, like sometimes people who experience this literally with like a claustrophobia. They like physically want to run away. But there is just a need to kind of like, what I always picture with the flight response is like the eject button on a seat where you're just like, I want to be out. So whatever environment or situation you're in, it's this wanting to like physically or emotionally run away. If fixated on fear typically tends to be more in the flight-based response. And then freeze / fawn, there's kind of four-ish. So fawn I consider in more of the freeze category, which is just feeling really burned out and difficulty saying no, people pleasing, dissociation, procrastinating. So what I tend to see in the freeze response is people who have a history of people pleasing, poor boundaries, feeling taken advantage of, potentially overgiving to everyone around them to making sure they're okay, feeling super burnt out. And then eventually they get into this like, I'm dissociated, I'm not checked in, I can't do this. I'm feeling kind of like hopeless.
Mm.
Um, so I think what starts in fawn, ultimately like helping others and people pleasing, goes into freeze. And this one, I mean, these are all common in women, but I think this one especially common in women primarily. So the freeze response it's a tough one to feel really burnt out.
And I think also one thing to know about even this season is, yes, it's the fifth season. It also happens to be when kids are going back to school. It is the start of Q3. If you're in the corporate world, it's one of the most like go, go, go seasons after a summer where everyone's on vacation. But it's not, it's actually the season where we're supposed to take, time to enjoy, right? So our world and the way our world is set up with corporate and schools and university and everything starting is like the opposite. Everything is a new beginning.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
of course, if we're not really checking in with how we're feeling and tapping into this energy where you can kind of appreciate that it's changing and appreciate how much is going on, and also take some time to just enjoy the beauty of the change.
absolutely. Absolutely. I know it is. I feel like this time of year, when it is really centered around like enjoying the fruits of your labor, taking this time to be present, these these nervous system responses, just like you were saying, Julie, they can be almost like more noticeable when you're out of alignment because you're like, why can't I do that? Like, why? The difference just feels really noticeable. So
And
that's
society is
absolutely,
not set up to appreciate the seasons and the natural shifts that we feel in our bodies. It's like the opposite.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Go, 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 especially in the middle of winter, as we'll talk about
Right.
when we get to that.
Oh yes, I know I'm going to be making everyone relax.
Right.
I'm sure we have many winter-based meditations on just coming back to stillness. Super important. So some regulation techniques for each of the three segments. These are just one basic technique for each one. You can obviously spend a lot of time on nervous system regulation techniques and coming back and understanding your nervous system in what segment it's currently in. But to help people who feel like they have this nervous system response coming on quickly, um, fight, typically in a fight-based response, people aren't thinking first to like orient themselves. Like they're not like they're just like they're pissed and they're not like, oh wait, let me just look at something real quick. So typically what I find most helpful for fight-based responses, like clench your body, make a fist, like physically clench your chest, your neck, like you can tighten up your face, like get really in there and hold it for 5 seconds, like
Oh,
that, and then let it go. So you can inhale, super clench, be really bad, and then exhale. And the more that you tighten, I mean, the really important thing about nervous system regulation is it is a visceral body response. So when we're in this fight response, your body wants to move through what that nervous system response is. So that anger that's coming up, the clenching and releasing allows that anger to move through you instead of doing something to suppress it. So when we do this action, it is getting that anger, moving through that anger response. And then typically after like 3, 5, however many rounds you need of doing that, you then can do an orienting practice of looking around the room, remember where you are in space and time. Under, like, sometimes I'll look at like objects that I find pretty in the room, take a moment just to stare at it. Like Julie was saying, look at a sunset. Then there tends to be a reorientation back into time and space in the present moment. For more of the flight-based response, I love this exercise. I think it is so exceptionally helpful, since this, as I mentioned, tends to be where my nervous system goes. So oftentimes for flight, sometimes it's triggering and sometimes it's not, to orient yourself into time and space. So if it's feeling too triggering, you can move right into the exercise. If you feel like you're not fully on the edge, orient yourself first. Look around the room, remember where you are, feel your feet on the ground, feel your butt in the chair if you're sitting. And then you can visualize, or you can literally, if you're sitting, move your legs like in a slow, if these are your legs, like in a slow walking motion. You can also just picture it in your head. And then depending on how much you're wanting to run away, make your legs move a little bit faster, faster, until you are visualizing or literally moving your legs as if they're sprinting. And you can do this seated with your legs in the air. You can do it sitting stationary in a chair. Typically, it works best if your body is still, but your legs are moving. And get this response physically out of your body, this flight response, as if you are running away. Proceed with a full circle action to give your body that release that it needs. And then again, if you haven't oriented yourself, come back to the present moment or do an orientation exercise. The freeze response, this tends to be when we're really dissociated, when we're not fully in our body. And what is so helpful, and it seems so simple, is to just do some really gentle body squeezes. So coming back to your arms, squeezing your arms. Sometimes if the squeezing even feels like too much, an exercise that I love is to just rub your arms and start to just do it slowly, like feel what it feels like to feel the divots of your muscles on your arms. And it feels really nice to give yourself a hug too. But even doing this, at first, it may not feel like anything. But if you stick with it for like a couple minutes, you're really going to start to regulate, coming back to feeling the sensation of your own hands touching your own arms. Sometimes I do this, like I'll rub my legs when I drive if I feel like I'm getting a little bit like dissociate. I mean, I feel like everyone tries to dissociate on Sturo Drive, but if you are feeling a little bit just out of it, you can start to do that. I do that all the time in the car, and it helps me bring me back to the present moment. So those are just some 3 like basic tools that you can utilize when you feel like you're in those states. Anything to add there, Julie?
I feel in a much better state even listening to this.
Well, that's excellent news. I'm so happy to
And
hear.
that's why we do this. I think this recording is going to be really useful. I will definitely listen to it again, like
Yeah,
even
absolutely.
while walking.
Yeah, it really, as someone who dealt with a lot of nervous system regulation issues, dealing with my health history, these were techniques that, I mean, they were game changers for me. And I know they sound so simple, but retraining your nervous system, it takes a lot of consistent time and effort. And anytime you're feeling like, oh, I went into freeze or I went into flight or fight, you can do these multiple times a day. There are days that I do this like 10 times in a day where I can feel myself like getting into a response I don't like, and just retraining my body that it is safe and it is okay and we can come back here. So they're cool techniques. So just some physical causes, because I do think it's really important that when we have physical health-based issues, it can cause a lot of nervous system dysregulation. Our nervous system is so sensitive to toxins. It is so sensitive to our hormone health. And oftentimes people will be in this mental health state of thinking like, oh my gosh, there's something so wrong with me. And oftentimes there's something physical connected into that. So if you are in that space, I really implore you to do some advanced testing to see, what physical causes may be underneath the surface in this. Even things like more serious mental health diagnoses like schizophrenia can have physical root cause imbalances. So I just want anyone listening to this to know that if you are going through a really challenging mental health time, like there is absolutely hope. So some causes that are top of mind, especially for me, definitely toxins, heavy metals can be a huge cause of anxiety, depression, sometimes even more serious mental health conditions. Endocrine disrupting chemicals, so things like parabens, phthalates, if they're disrupting our hormones, they can certainly impact our moods. And anything that passes the toxins that pass the blood-brain barrier can have a dramatic impact on our central nervous system. I think we forget that our brains can be exposed to toxins, and that can really impact the way that we visualize and see and experience the world. You know, our nervous system, it works from a top brain down to body, but it also works from body up to brain approach. So if we have things that are impacting body or brain, you can experience things that, again, make you see the world and your experience in the world a lot different. And hormones, fluctuation can cause dramatic hormones. Julie and I were talking about this study this week that came out really recently that showed that women who are in their perimenopausal period in years are, and this is a heavy topic to bring up, but they're most likely to commit suicide. And the dramatic fluctuation of hormones has a dramatic impact on women's health. And because perimenopause is so underrecognized and so understudied in the field of medicine, women are meant to feel that there's something so wrong with them and they don't have the resources that they need to get help. So just know if this is something you're struggling with.
And I know for me, when I was dealing with all my fibroid issues, which were caused by many things, including toxins and high cortisol and hormonal imbalance, but I was depressed. I couldn't take work. I couldn't go on vacation. I couldn't really be in my relationship. I would be so anxious to walk down the street because I mean, we can just say it on this, right? It's a safe space. I had crime scene periods. I could not leave the house. And so obviously that would make me pretty depressed. Like friends would ask me to go out, couldn't do it. Even driving in my car, I would be nervous that I was going to be, that I was going to have an accident. And I told you about the day that I was flying on a plane and did have an accident, and I'm not the only one. And so that the anxiety of the physical things that were happening with me on top of the stress that that was creating, and then it just became this circle that I couldn't get out of where I felt trapped, and it was almost impossible to not feel really sad.
Yeah.
Really depressed. So, and I think a lot of the things that we also, and we'll get into this on another thing too, but particularly at that stage of life is also maybe when you're up for the big promotion or you don't get it, your relationship might be falling apart. The number one period of time when women get divorced is between 40 and 50. Your kids might be going to school. It's tough, right? Like this is a hard time, but it doesn't have to be that way because a lot of it might actually be something that you could find in a biomarker and be like, okay, there's actually a solution for that. There's not a solution for maybe a lot of the other things, but control your controllables.
Absolutely.
For me, like and not to like take it on a tangent, but for me, when I was able to like resolve the hormonal imbalance,
Yeah.
And I was getting acupuncture, which immediately alleviated so many and I was much happier, even though I had the other physical symptoms. I felt like I could handle it. And so that was better too. And I was sleeping better and all these other things that happened from just that and Chinese herbs. So the holistic for me was really important. And then, as many people know, I ended up having to have a surgery because it had gotten to a point. But when the fibroids were removed, I suddenly had no depression, right? So, and then also not to keep going on it, but with the nutrients, obviously low iron. If you're having that kind of, and it's very common in perimenopause for women to have ridiculously heavy periods.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have a loss of iron because you have a blood loss. That's not your normal everyday blood loss. And that can make you feel, honestly, there's no other word for it, like crap, fatigued, not ready to face the day. And especially during this season when the lights gets darker earlier. I mean, it's pitch black right now, and I don't know, 2 months ago at 9 p.m., it was just starting to get dark, really dark. So it's sad. So anyway, not to go, but it's important to know that. And there are other times of people's lives too that things are happening. And whenever we're going through a transition, which happens for women at many phases of life,
Yes,
just understand what's happening, like trying to get pregnant.
absolutely. No, I thank you so much for sharing that because it's so, I think it's so helpful, especially with mental health, because, and I've been here, you're in these situations and you're like, what is wrong with me? Like, what is
Yeah.
going on? And it's so amazing. Like when you got your fibroids out, all the depression non-existent.
Yeah.
So I think it is so important to acknowledge the nervous system response and to acknowledge, how to bring people back into the present moment. And all of that is really real. And the physical causes, I mean, it helps give people so much relief knowing that there is a reason why they are thinking and feeling the way that they are thinking. I mean, oh my God, when I was in the height of
Yeah.
dealing with like Lyme and mold, I mean, not a brain space I would wish upon anyone. And you address those issues and you start to feel like yourself again. And you're like, oh my God,
Lyme.
it's just wild.
I mean, I know other people who've been through Lyme and it's just, it's deflating,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
We can be doing all the right things. So I do think it's important to understand this. And the reality is, both of us and many others were told by doctors that when we had very real physical causes to just go on a medication for depression or anxiety, and it wouldn't have done anything
no,
because it
it was
doesn't solve the problem, which was something else.
absolutely. Yeah, it was definitely, I was told that many times.
Yeah. This
And
that we should we should do another Thriving Thursday on just that. It's sort of a depressing topic, but at the same time, it's kind of amusing how many of us have been through it and things are changing. Things are changing. But the
yeah,
first step is to acknowledge that this could be, or it could be a combination of things, where you could have physical things that are leading to emotional things, and emotional things can actually cause some of the, other
of
issues
course.
with
I
gut
mean,
health.
just like what we talked about with the regulation, it is a top down and bottom up approach. I mean, you do have to address both no matter what. But it is a big relief when
Yeah.
you can correlate something to when you find the cause. It is a really big relief. And
And to
Julie,
that end, because we've looked at lab work of, and stuff, it's most people have something on
of
this
course.
list, I would say.
Oh, I've never seen it otherwise.
Yeah, kind
And
of scary to think about, right?
yeah, it is. It is. And Julie, just what you were saying about like the nutrients, low iron makes you feel awful. Low vitamin D is really hard. That can be a sole cause for depression.
Yep.
Having low B12 makes you feel like you have no energy, and low magnesium can make you feel lots of anxiety, jitteriness. Almost everyone has low magnesium, unless you're supplementing. So those are some nutrients that can contribute a lot to anxiety. And gut health is a really big one because we have so many of our neurotransmitters, particularly serotonin, that is highly, highly manufactured in the gut. So if we're having leaky gut issues, if we are having lots of inflammation going on in the gut, you're definitely having low serotonin production. If we have like lots of leaky gut, typically that correlates sometimes, not always, but with a leaky brain. So that blood-brain barrier can actually be leaky. And sometimes that firmness that separates what keeps our brain super safe can be penetrated by certain things. So if people have leaky guts, typically I'm thinking they have a leaky brain barrier as well. And that can happen with other toxins, things like glyphosate can do that.
We just talked about that tonight too, as well.
We did. Yeah.
And yesterday, even when we were talking about a consulting contract I wouldn't take.
Yes. Values are very important.
Well, also things that literally are known carcinogens and endocrine disruptors that are in our everyday food and life.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but ways to avoid it. So it's like not all, the thing is like you can change so many things. You can optimize, you can really, once you connect, I mean, it's part of the reason we called it Connect to your health, right? For like our tagline, our little working tagline, is because its connection is understanding the connection with this.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it is very validating, by the way, if you do go into a doctor's office and are like this
Oh, of course.
up on a lab. So no,
Yep.
my
Yeah, you
vitamin
know,
D was not low because of that. It was something else.
something else.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So
And
these
it
are,
always is something else.
yeah, absolutely. So if
Right.
you are experiencing some things that are related to mental health, these are the places that I would start looking physically. There are deeper causes that you can look at as well, but I would rule these out first. And then talking about like the burden of women in terms of mental health, women are expected to have these high powered careers, work responsibilities. Typically, they're the primary caregivers for their children, their homes, their relationships, in any pets, any capacity. They're considered the heads of the household, the organizations of the household. I mean, when we think about typically the family structure in more of a traditional based paradigm, you know, it's like the men sitting at the head of the table, but that saying behind every good man, partner, insert whatever adjective you want to put there or noun, I'm sorry, is a good woman. I mean, we know women run the world and that they run families and that they run work and responsibilities, and yet they're intuitive powerhouses, and that our bodies are much more sensitive than men. And it's sort of this perspective of women are expected to do it all, to be everything to everyone, to be these caregivers, to show up to work, to be this high powered career, to be in the relationship, to be really compassionate, and at the same time, like
Mm.
act in this masculine frame while being these really sensitive, very intuitive people. And doing both is a lot. And when we expect women to really adapt to and perform in a more hyper masculine society and still expect them to be, intuitive and sensitive and kind and giving and compassionate,
Mhm.
that is the burden that women face today, is having to be both. And it is an exceptional burden to bear, and it goes against a lot of the true nature that women have. We can't be both and we can't be everything all the time. So if that is where some of this mental health component is coming up for you in your family life, your home structure, seeking support from other women, why this community is so important. Other women can absolutely relate to what you're going through. And also making sure that you are taking care of yourself in the spaces and times that you can, because this burden is exceptionally real.
I like what you just said, taking care of yourself in the spaces and times that you can.
Yeah. Because I know it's not always doable or obtainable to necessarily have that level of care always that we're needing for ourselves in that moment, especially when careers and families and everything is involved.
Yep.
And it is exceptionally important to do what you can. If that means reaching out to someone in this community, reaching out to a friend, getting an accountability person in this community, that you guys, even every day, 5 minutes, the both of you sit down and journal, or you meditate, or you send voice memos to each other, whatever it is that you need to feel supported, heard, and valued. I hope that you can find that resource for yourself, because it's really important. So that is the conclusion of our Thriving Thursdays September edition.
Well, we're gonna have a Q&A now.
Yeah. We are going to have a Q&A, so people can ask questions. So we're going to pause the video real quick, and then we will resume it just to do a little conclusion. Okay, I paused it. Oh, wait, I don't know. Let me see. Stop share. Recording. Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Your questions were epic. And I love being able to talk about this topic so women feel like they're supported, they have a better idea about what's going on with their mental health. And again, use the resources in the community, chat with each other, so everyone feels that they have the support that they need.
And next week,
Next
on Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern, we're going to kick off the September challenge is actually kicking off the next day in the morning, or it's actually like midnight or 12:01 a.m. on Tuesday morning. We will have the first lessons released, but anybody who is on the community can go and do the overview now, can look at it over the weekend, do some tips and preparation for September challenge. And in it, because the thing is, the 3 things that we're doing will actually help you feel better physically.
Mhm.
And there is a link, the mind-body connection.
Absolutely.
Feel better mentally too.
Of course, absolutely.
And to accomplish something. It feels nothing a little bit of movement can't solve for a lot of things, by the way, as we know with today.
Oh my God. Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. And we'll be back next Thursday for another Thriving Thursday. We'll be talking about sugar. So I'm really excited.
Yeah. Breaking up with sugar.
Breaking up with sugar. It's a toxic relationship.
It is. It's very toxic, literally.
I know.
All right. Good night. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Have a good night.